second chance for a break that would make it okay. There's always some reason to feel not good enough, and it's hard at the end of the day. I need some distraction, oh, beautiful release. Memories seep from my veins, and maybe empty, oh, weightless, and maybe I'll find some peace tonight in the arms of the angel, far away from here, from this dark, cold hotel room, and the endlessness that you fear. You are pulled from the wreckage of your silent reverie. You're in the arms of the angel. May you find some comfort here.
I represent divine principles, total equality, a society where people own all things in common, where there is no rich or poor, where there are no races. Wherever there's people struggling for justice and righteousness, there I am, and there I am involved.
so purely socialistic, and some of my family is so purely socialistic, some of the members of this glorious temple are so purely socialistic that you'd be glad to work to see that everyone had the same kind of house, the same kind of cars. Well, if you want your car painted differently, that'd be all right. You know, we're not talking about the same color and exactly the same pieces of furniture. But say that people are so afraid of socialism. Oh, they're so terrified. They say, what will it do to us? Why, you poor people, the average man in the street, even the small grocery owner, the small businessman, if the money of this country was actually shared, there would be approximately $110,000 income for every person in America. Everything is being destroyed by the love of money, capitalism. That's why we say we're socialists and our enemy, the devil, is capitalism. And the love of money is the thing that's inundating this world with pain. That's what causes violence. That's why youngsters are robbing people on the streets, because everyone thinks of themselves as alone against the world. Everyone thinks, I've got to make my own. No one teaches that we help or bear one another's burdens. So every child feels like he's got to steal his way through. So everybody's turned against each other. That's why black are against black, because we're taught to be against each other. The rich wants us to fight amongst themselves so the rich can stand off and laugh and drain us dry and use us to be their work slaves. Claim to be your stupid sky god. I claim to be the only God there is. When I say I'm God, then I feel strength well up within my soul, and I see it well up in you, and I see the sick healed, and the blind see, and the dead raised.
We thought of ourselves as one big family that did handle our own discipline. I was in a lot of the meetings where people were spanked or beaten, and I was slapped once also in a public meeting.
People were brought up front and asked they had to tell who they'd slept with and who they'd sneaked off to a restaurant with.
It wasn't a week that went by that I wasn't called up on the floor because of my behavior, because of my attitude. Stanley Clayton, up front center.
He would ask people, what do you think we ought to do with them? You think you ought to get a good boxing? And then you'd get a resounding roar. Yes.
You might fight 5 people in one night. Well, you know, you're very tired. I've seen situations where they actually knocked the person out and actually took water and threw the water back on, woke him up and woke him some more.
I had welts really bad, and when I went to work the next day, one of my employees noticed the welts when I sat down, and I just broke down and told her. She didn't even know I was People's Temple. And she called the manager of the station up, and they talked to me about leaving. I couldn't say goodbye to my son and my husband, because at that point it was like the Gestapo. The families were turning in each other. If I had said goodbye, one of them would have reported me.
It's kind of like when you get married and you have this ideal and you're in love, and then, the honeymoon wears off and reality sets in. And most people, once the going gets rough, don't jump out immediately.
In one planning commission meeting, Jim was getting notes, kind of love notes from one of the members on the planning commission.
Jones is sitting there calmly, and so another lady said, well, I don't know why you keep doing that. What makes you think you got something that he wants anyway? And so another woman says, well, you know what, you ought to just take off your clothes and show him what you got. You ain't got nothing. And so By this time, they look back to Jones, and so he looks over his glasses and he nods with approval. Yeah, that's a good idea.
She was to be totally naked, and she was down to nothing but her skin. Not even any shoes on, no bra, no panties, no nothing.
Then they begin to say what her breasts look like, her stomach, butt, vagina, you name it. Everything they could think of, they were saying. By this time, her face is red. Her body's almost red from embarrassment. And I noticed something. Jones was sitting, looking over his sunglasses, but he had a smile on his face, like he's really enjoying this woman being torn down.
I have a conscious memory of sitting there thinking to myself, this is wrong. And I didn't do a damn thing to stand up and say, this is wrong.
It's like a child in a dysfunctional family. On a certain level, it's normal, I just kind of took everything in stride.
But then we felt like we had gotten involved and gotten in so deep that there was actually no way out.
Jim said that all of us were homosexuals. Everyone except, he was the only heterosexual on the planet. And that the women were all lesbians and the guys were all gay. And so anyone that showed any interest in sex was just compensating.
What he explained to each of us and in sermons was that sexual relationships were very selfish and they took away from the focus of the church, and that was to help others. Jim was not celibate. Nobody knew that until perhaps it was their time to find out. What he spoke from the pulpit wasn't what he did behind the scenes.
When you don't have anything, you own Jonestown. You were a part of Jonestown. You were a shareholder at Jonestown if you were African American. It gave them the opportunity to really be a part of creating a utopia.
Pretty soon we were seeing film footage of the first crew that went down there. We all wanted to go. I wanted to go. It looked like freedom.
Jim Jones represented the People's Temple as a progressive movement that was threatened. That there were outside forces who didn't want us to do what we were doing. And it was the government. The government was infiltrating and wiretapping and trying to kill people or assassinate people. And that's what was happening.
He was always paranoid that someone was going to get in and try to kill him. That they had two people that had dedicated their lives, that they were going to jump in front of Jones and take the bullet, kind of like the Secret Service, so to speak.
Jim started changing a lot in the 70s. He was taking drugs. I think he said it was his kidneys at the time. And he was getting more and more paranoid. Incredibly paranoid.
Jim Jones wasn't there, things tended to be a little bit lighter. You know, people would be dancing or singing. There'd be music in different cottages. But when Jones was present, it was very, very dark. It was almost like a dark cloud.
In Jonestown, there was a speaker system, and only Jim spoke on it. And it went 24 hours a day, and he would tape himself. So in the middle of the night, all through the night, his voice was talking to you. Every night at some point, his voice would come over the loudspeaker and he'd say, I'm sending somebody out tonight. Somebody you know, somebody you trust. And they're going to act like they want to leave. But this is a loyalty test, and you need to turn them in.
A father would turn in a son, a husband would turn in a wife, a small child would turn in a parent. There was no freedom to express to one another what was going on because everything was suspect. The most forbidden thing to express was to leave.
Just yesterday morning, they let me know you were gone. Suzanne, the plans they made put an end to you. I walked out this morning and I wrote down this song. I just can't remember who to send it to. I've seen fire and I've seen rain. I've seen sunny days that I thought would never end. I've seen lonely times when I could not find a friend. But I always thought that I'd see you again. Won't you look down upon me, Jesus? You gotta help me make a stand. Just got to see